Anyways, like I said, it's a great time this past week to reflect a little bit, prepare for what we have coming up here to the end of the year. Hopefully you got your game plan in place and you know what you're closing this year, and it's not going to be a panic towards the end. But if you don't, this was hopefully a nice week for you to take some account of where you are, what your plan is going to the end of the year, and also what you're going to be doing in the beginning of next year so that you're not starting from zero. But for me, I spent some time with family, definitely looked at the plan, and I got some strategy sessions coming up here this month with my team to talk about what we're going to be doing for next year and how we did against this year and everything else. But this session, what I wanted to talk about, I've had a couple of guest hosts on this recently on Make It Happen Mondays, and those have been fantastic. Phil and Morgan and a whole bunch of other people, which has been great. This one I wanted to go solo one more time for a little bit and talk about these guiding principles that I put together a long time ago, and just share with you what they've done for me, and recommend something that they do for you that it'll hopefully do for you guys as well. So if you have questions, as always, feel free to chime in. I'm monitoring the Facebook channel here. So I'll be happy to jump in on any questions you have about anything related to sales. So prospecting, closing, deals, whatever, feel free to chime in and I'm happy to answer any of that. But like I said, I wanted to walk through my 12 guiding principles here. And the background on this one is a while back, I think I was watching something or a blog, I read a blog or something like that about how it's really important to understand why you do what you do and the why. Everybody here talks about the why, right? But as a manager, also, how can you translate how your approach to your employees so they can get a better sense of where you're coming from? And so what I ended up doing was I put together these 12 guiding principles. At first they started, it wasn't 12, it was, I think it was like 5 or 6 of them, but then it grew as I learned more and more and more. And you can find these out if you go on, I'll post this in the comments here, and I'll put it on a podcast too, but you know, you can go find them. They're 12 guiding principles. I think somebody made an ebook out of them, and I got a PDF for it. But the reason they're important is because if you don't have some guiding principles and you have nothing to bounce them up against, if you will, when it comes time to making a decision, or people really, if you're all over the place in your guiding principles, for instance, and you don't really know what they are, people don't know where you're coming from. And so I think both externally and internally, it's worth the exercise of going through and understanding, how do I look at things? And this is different than goal setting, by the way. Goal setting is something where I think that's extremely important, especially right now going into the new year. What are your plans for this year and all that stuff? But I think it's worth taking that step back and figuring out, okay, how am I going to live my life? And where are my opinions coming from? Where is my thought process coming from? So you can stay consistent with it and also have something to give you a guiding light. So I'm going to walk through briefly what mine are. And this is also something I put in my Kickstarter for the sales journal. One of the things you'll see if you do buy the sales journal, the first page are my guiding principles, and then an opportunity for you to write some of yours down. So whether you get the journal or not, that's not the point. Is I think it's worth writing them down and keeping them pinned up so that you have that guiding light. So just to kind of briefly hit on some of mine. My first one is guiding principle number 1 is work hard and smart. And the reason I came up with this one was because a while back I kept hearing oh, you got to work smarter. You don't have to work harder. You got to work smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter. And everybody's been focused on trying to work smarter, which I think is important, obviously. But I really do believe that people have gotten away from the hard work, the working hard and smart. Because you can't just work smarter and expect things to work out for you. You got to work your ass off. People ask me all the time, John, what's the secret to success, right? And I get the same I get the same answer every single time. Look, I'm not the smartest kid out there. I went to a state school. I did all right in school, but I'm not one of those brainiac kids that can, ace a test without really even trying. I got to work my ass off. And for me, the secret to success has been working my ass off. And that's pretty much it. I knew early on I didn't have the skills or abilities that a lot of other people had in sales, but I knew what I could do. I knew I could work harder than you. Not you personally, but I knew I could work harder than the majority of other people out there. So that's why I made more phone calls than everybody else. I went on more meetings than everybody else. I went to more events and networked as much as I possibly could, because at that age, at 24, 25 years old, that's what I had. I had time, and instead of wasting it going out and drinking, and don't get me wrong, I did plenty of drinking, but there were nights where I gave up going out to that happy hour so I could go to an event. There were times where, instead of going home a little bit early, I made those extra few phone calls and got that extra deal in the pipeline. So for me, yes, obviously I think we have to work smart, but if we get away from working hard, we're going to lose it altogether. So that's number one for me. Two is always ask for feedback. This is one where if you're not constantly looking for feedback of how you can improve from everybody, by the way, not just your seniors, right, the executives, and hey, how could I do better on this, but also your peers and people who are maybe a little bit lower than you on the totem pole. If you're not always looking for feedback, then you don't know how to get better. And I want honest feedback. I want straight up people to say, and I tell them all the time, look, whatever you say here, as long as it's constructive, I'm going to take it, and I'm not going to be defensive about it. I'm going to maybe let it settle in for a little bit, and then maybe ask you a few extra questions to clarify for you. But I'm always open for feedback. And even in the worst way too, I mean, online, a lot of times I get, still to this day, I'll write a post or I'll do something and I'll get this negative feedback on it. And my gut is to react to it and try to correct that person's frame of thought. But now I realize I just need to accept that feedback for what it is and maybe look for trends to see if that's something consistent out there and adjust accordingly. So I think that always ask for feedback and always be open to feedback is something that you need to foster around you so that you're always getting new ideas and better ways of doing things, right? And again, not being defensive about whatever feedback comes your way. 3 was continuously set SMART goals. And I adjusted this one from setting, it used to say continuously set goals. They have to be SMART, again, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Most people have been following me know that SMART goal setting is a huge part of what I do. There was an article though that shifted me a little bit on this one, and I think I might update my guiding principle because I also there was a guy who was like, is SMART goal setting really good? And I was like, oh well, that's clickbait. I'm going to read that. And he's like, look, it's really important to set SMART goals, but SMART, specific, measurable, realistic, and timely. And his big issue was realistic. Because what he said is, if you keep following SMART goals, then you never stretch yourself to something that's completely improbable or something you would never guess, but it's something you might be able to do anyways. I know, I forget who does it, but that 10X book, right? Where it's like, if your goal is $1 million, make it 10X, make it $10 million, something that you would never think you could achieve. But if you do that, if you have those big goals out there, that helps you be motivated for bigger picture things. So I think you can have both, and that's what his point on the article was dumb goals versus SMART goals, and it was DUMB, and if it stood for something like something unrealistic and whatever. So it was effectively these huge gross goals. Okay, so I think they're important for both. I think day-to-day SMART goal setting, what you want to do today, write it down to. There's something oddly satisfying about crossing things off the list, and by writing them down, they're in front of you. I have a whiteboard here in front of my desk, and I write down 3 goals every single week of what I want to get accomplished, and that's how I measure myself. At the end of the week, if I got those things done, I had a good week. If I didn't, I could have had a better week. Think and Grow Rich, by the way, that book is all about super successful people and the one common trait they all have together, which is setting goals and being very specific about how they're going to reach those goals and not letting anybody get in their way. So I think goal setting is a super boring topic, I know, but it's one of the more important things you can do as a sales professional and as a business professional, get yourself moving in the right direction. Number 4 is earn everything. And I mean earn it. I do not expect one handout in this life. I do not expect one person to do me a favor. I don't even really believe in luck. I mean, I do to a certain degree, but when I say luck, I mean, when people say I'm lucky for where I am in my career, whatever I'm doing, I really, really get a negative, very reactive on that one, because if you consider me lucky, I'm pissed, because not one thing of where I've gotten into my career has been because of luck. Now, was I fortunate? Absolutely. Was I fortunate to be born into a family with a mother and father who are still married after 50 years and provided a good upbringing? Absolutely. Was I fortunate to be born in the town that I was born in, which wasn't a high-end town? It was a kind of a middle, I'd say middle-class town that was, but again, provided me an opportunity, so I wasn't scraping and clawing every single day trying to survive. Yeah, absolutely, I was fortunate. But am I lucky for where I am today? Did I catch a couple of breaks? Okay, would you consider that luck? I don't think so. I believe you make your own luck, and you have to earn it. And I mean this across the board. Earn the right to make a cold call to somebody by doing a little bit of homework on their website and having a reason to reach out to them. earn earn their business, obviously, by doing everything right throughout the sales process, earn the right for the promotion and not expect it. You know, that earn mentality, I think, has also dropped a little far. So it kind of goes hand in hand with work ethic, right? Work hard and smart and earn everything. I think there's a little bit of an entitlement factor here, and I'm not just talking about millennials, I'm talking about everybody. Of, hey, you know, what's next for me? You know, without really earning or mastering whatever the craft is to be able to get to that next level. So earn everything, in my opinion, is critical. The fifth one is be open and honest with everybody, with everyone, especially yourself. I'm about as transparent as a seller as you get. I'm a pretty bad liar because I just it's pretty evident when I'm lying. And so for me, transparency and being open and honest with yourself about what your flaws are and what you need to improve on, and also translating that on other people is extremely important and effective. Because I find when I'm very open with somebody about where I stand and whether I'm a good fit for their situation or not, they tend to reverse it and start selling me on why they want me, right? Because I'm like, you know what, it doesn't look like I'm a good fit here or something. And let me tell you why. And so that transparency, that honesty of, look, I don't need your business. I want your business. I don't need it. I'm trying to qualify you in as much as I'm trying to qualify you out here. And here's where this, for instance, if I'm selling, here's where this training really makes really hits a home run, and here's where it's okay. If it's okay, I'm probably going to walk away and suggest you work with somebody else, versus if it's a home run, that's where I'm going to push on you because I know what a difference it can make. When you take that transparent approach to presenting your solutions, asking the right questions, people tend to gravitate towards that as opposed to run away from it. Like most sales reps try to push about all the wonderful things their stuff does, even though they know it's not great in certain areas. I'm the first one to point out my flaws. I'm the first one to point out the where it isn't a fit or where it really could be a lot better, if you will. And that has gotten me more business than most other approaches I've tried to take. You know, kind of fake it till you make it thing. Yeah, to a certain degree, but also don't. You know, if there's a flaw with what you are presenting or you're offering or whatever it is, it's way better to get it out then and set the right expectation than it is to sell it and then all of a sudden have that happen and have a happy customer. So I think that open and honest thing is huge. And when I say with yourself too, I mean, you got to be able to go home and look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know, am I better today than I was yesterday? Did I really do that the way I could have done it, or should I have done it a different way, and try to reflect as much as possible? Too many of us kind of, here's a perfect example about being open and honest with yourself that is relevant right now and at the end of November, moving into the end of the year here in December, which is your pipeline. Look at your pipeline. If you have those 20 percenters that are in your pipeline that keep getting pushed month over month over month over month because you're saying there's a chance, those, you're not being honest with yourself. If you haven't talked to a client, for instance, in the past 30 days and you think that deal's going to close by the end of the year, you're not being honest with yourself. If you got a verbal commitment from somebody way below the power line and you haven't engaged with power, that oh yeah, John, we're going to do business with you, that felt good, right? So a lot of times we put these happy years on because we heard something we wanted to hear or whatever, and then we ignore the stuff we don't want to hear because, you know, it's not, rejection isn't cool. It's not, it doesn't feel good to get told no. But man, if you are not honest with yourself about the fact that you are dealing with somebody way low below the power line, they said yes, but they don't have the authority, and you think this is going to happen by the end of the year, you're not going to have to be honest with yourself because your forecast and your pipeline will be honest for you when that doesn't happen. Okay. So right now, I think you should flush out everything that's in your pipeline and figure out realistically, be honest with yourself. Where are we with this deal and what do I need to do? And is this actually going to happen by the end of the year? Let's see. Number 6 is don't think you're better than anybody else, but know nobody's better than you. This is one of those things of ego and confidence. Okay. Confidence is thinking you're better than other people. Ego is thinking that you're better than other people. Confidence is knowing that you're good and not worrying about other people. And so I think that that actually leads to the next one. But when I say don't think you're better than anybody else, when I was selling DeWalt power tools, so my first job was selling power tools, right? DeWalt power tools. And I remember our job was to literally drive onto a job site and go sell DeWalt power tools compared to what they were using. Most of the other reps on my team, what they would do is they would drive onto the construction site. They would go immediately to the trailer with the foreman in it, and they would pitch there all the wonderful things about DeWalt and why DeWalt tools are so great. And they would bypass all the workers, like the people who are sitting down and working and using the tools. And I knew enough about tools, but I didn't know the intricacies. I didn't know the applications and how they use them really on a job site and how they would hold up, stuff like that. So what I ended up doing was I ended up sitting down when I would get on a job site. I'd be sitting down with a couple of the workers and say, hey, I see you're using a Makita drill there. Got a question for you. Have you ever used the DeWalt version of that? I'd be like, well, no. And I'd be like, hey, so what's, how do you use it? And I would just watch them. And I'd be like, hey, would you mind just trying this one and seeing what you think? And they'd use it. And they'd be like, oh, I like it. And this is why or whatever. I'd be like, great. You know what? Why don't you keep it for a week or two? Beat the crap out of it. I want to come back in a week and I want to get your feedback on it just to see what your thoughts are. And they'd be like, all right, cool. So I'd leave it with them. They'd come in, they'd beat the crap out of it, use it, and then I'd come back a week later. And the amount of education that they gave me on what the tool was and how it worked and what applications, I mean, that was way better than DeWalt ever trained me on. And so what I would do is I would gather that intel and that insight to build a story about why the foreman should ask for, the DeWalt tools next time instead of the Makita tools. And then I would go into their office. And so I learned more about power tools by talking to the end users than I would ever have learned in a classroom setting with DeWalt going through PowerPoints or whatever with me. So when I say you can learn something from everybody, this is even the secretary, the gatekeeper, that lowly little person. Now, I'm not saying the bottom up approach is the be all end all as far as, okay, let me learn all this stuff and then build a story. You have to do both. I'm actually preferred top down approach. But when it comes to learning about the business, my ears are open. I don't care who you are. I don't care what it is. My ears are open, except even from sales training. I'm always looking to learn new stuff about sales training, because if you aren't learning new things, if you aren't being open to that type of stuff, then again, somebody's going to pass you by real damn quick. Number 7 really flows into what I was just saying there, which is confidence overcomes most shortcomings except for an ego. There's a fine line between ego and confidence, but a massive difference, right? Again, confidence is knowing that you're good and not having to tell everybody about it. Ego is thinking that you're good and telling everybody about it. It's kind of like, people who work out. Like, I don't need to know that you work out. I don't need you to tell me that you work out based on the way you look. I mean, you look pretty legit and you're pretty muscular. Okay, you work out. A confident person doesn't need to tell me to go to the gym every single day. Whereas a ego-driven person is like, yeah, I did legs and buys today and whatever. So those are the type of things you want to avoid, especially in sales. With training, with what I do. I mean, there's an easy part to get an ego on this, because you're standing in front of 20, 30, 40 people at the same time, and they're all listening to what you're saying. And if you can, capture their attention for that period of time, for a day or so, and then get the feedback on it, it's easy to get an ego about this. But then you get, which is why I think a lot of trainers, for instance, old school trainers, get egos, because they keep getting told, oh, well, this is awesome, this is awesome, this is awesome. But then they stop selling, because a lot of their stuff comes through referrals or whatever it is after that. And they stand up there and they give that same tired ass speech that they gave 10 years ago or slide deck. If you would have asked those trainers to go back and sell and get back in the weeds again and make phone calls and all that other stuff, they'll realize they're not as good as they think they are, right? Because it is so much harder to do this than it is to actually train it, which is why I still sell, right? If you told me all I could do was be a trainer and go out there and train, I didn't have to sell, I didn't have to work with clients, but my job was training, I'd turn it down. Sales is my passion. That's what I love doing. And it's the most humbling profession on the planet, because the minute you think your shit doesn't stink, somebody throws shit on you that stinks. And you got to realize, okay, I'm not as good as I thought I was. I got a lot to learn here. I've said this before. I get caught going through the motions every once in a while, where, I have so many meetings on a regular basis that follow a very similar talk track, and I kind of know the pitch when it is right, okay? And so sometimes I get actually super lazy with that, because I'm going through, 10, 15 meetings on a daily basis with prospects and clients. And the prospect ones, every once in a while I don't prep for it the way I should, or, I don't look at their website and come up with any thoughtful questions. I ask my typical BANT questions, whatever. And then, what happens, at least once a year, I get caught going through the motions, where an executive will pause during the meeting and they'll tell that I'm kind of just asking the basic questions. Or after the fact, I'll get an email pretty much right after saying, hey, thanks for your time, but I think we're going to move in a different direction here. And that always tells me that I need to wake up again. I need to go back to doing what I know is the right thing to do to prepare for that meeting and respect that person's time that I'm taking off of their calendar. And so, that's the humbling aspect of sales, I think, is a good one. But you got to make sure that those meetings don't come too often, so you don't get caught in this negative tailspin here, because there's a very real chance of that happening based on the amount of no's that we take. But once you start getting on that roll, don't you get that damn ego. Have confidence and really try to focus on sharing insights and your ideas and stuff like that without telling people, hey, here's my idea, that you should do this. That's ego, right? And everybody, smells ego from a mile away, but they're drawn to confidence. So be more confident than anything else. Number 8 is find your passion or find something else to do. For me, I think the generations below my generation, we're told, follow your passion, right? Follow your passion, go follow your passion. I personally think that is horrendous advice, absolutely horrendous advice, to follow your passion to a 15, 16, 18-year-old kid. You don't really know what you're passionate about. If you were to say, John, follow your passion when I was 15, 16, whatever it was, I'd be a dead broke artist living on the street smoking weed all day long. I mean, that's literally what I would be if you said follow your passion, because I was passionate about art. I was passionate about basketball. I was passionate about these things. But that doesn't mean I should create a career out of them. So that's why one of my guiding principles, instead of follow your passion, is find your passion and then follow it, right? So, because if you're not passionate about what you do, like for instance, specifically in sales is one of the hardest professions on the planet. If you do not fundamentally believe in what you're doing, if you're not passionate about what you're doing, then this profession can eat you up real fast. But if you believe in what you're doing and you're passionate about it, I'm not saying it's easy, because it's definitely not, but it's so much easier when you believe in yourself, when you believe in what you're doing, when you believe in the direction you're going. Then it's about that transfer of enthusiasm. I've said this before, where one of my favorite quotes somebody gave me early in my career was that sales is a transfer of enthusiasm. And that enthusiasm has to come through, because sales still is an emotional thing. People buy on emotion, they back it up with facts, but it's still emotional. And that's why that passion is so, so important. And that transfer of that enthusiasm and that passion is so important. That's why founders even engineers are great sales reps at the beginning, because they are selling what they built, and that passion, when they talk about something that they built, is infectious and people buy into it. And then they think, oh, sales is easy, let me go hire a bunch of sales reps and go out there and sell this stuff because people love it. But what they don't understand is that passion, that transfer of enthusiasm that they had because of how strongly they believed in that product or service that they developed, it is so much more effective in a sales presentation than some sales rep droning through a slide deck and telling you all the features and benefits about what the solution is. So my point on this one is, if you are not in a position right now where you are passionate about what you're doing, and I mean that, product or service you're representing, or any of that stuff, try to figure out how to get passionate about it. Try to figure out how to believe in it, and then if you can, go talk to the C-level executive about why they started the business. Talk to some customers about their experience with you or whatever, so that you can believe, hey, shit, this stuff makes a difference. And then go transfer that enthusiasm, because if you're not passionate, it comes through. If you don't believe in what you do, why should I? So go find that passion and then go all in on it. And that's when I think you can achieve massive success, is when you find something you're passionate about, and then, a little bit later in life, and then apply some of your business knowledge and how to make money doing it, and then take it from there. Here's one. Number 9 is what goes around comes around. This is one of those, hey, what's up, Dan? Yeah, I'm growing a playoff beard here. We'll see. It was a Movember thing. I just got lazy and didn't want to shave, so that was a question coming up from Dan. But anyways, what goes around comes around. That's number 9. I can't tell you how many examples I have of this one to point back to, where when I did something early in my career and I had no expectation of getting something in return for it, but then 2-3 years later something happened, or I turned down that piece of business because it wasn't the right fit, and I gave the client a referral to somebody else who was a better fit, And as much as I lost out on that deal here in the short term, you know, a year later when they were ready for my stuff, there was no question. It wasn't even a sales process. They were like, John, you know, you helped me out earlier, and now that I'm doing this, I think you're a good fit. Can we get going on this? Absolutely. And when I say good and bad, when I say what goes around comes around, I mean that both in a positive and negative way. You screw somebody out, you know, in the deal, for instance, you add extra terms there, you keep the pricing high, or whatever it is, you take advantage of the situation. 9 times out of 10, that comes back to bite you in the ass. And I do think there's just something where the universe is definitely connected in some way, shape, or form. I don't want to get too stoner heavy on you, but there's no question in my mind that I've seen multiple examples that prove what goes around comes around, and too many for me to ignore. So that's why I always look like, hey, if I do this, I know something bad's going to happen in the future. I just don't know what or when. And 9 times out of 10, it's usually at the worst time when it does come back to bite you in the ass. So just what goes around comes around is how I live my life, and that's how I treat people too. The 10th one here is you can learn something new from everyone in every situation. And this is, again, I think this kind of goes back, and now that I'm looking at these, I want to consolidate some of these, and I did that with the Gary Vaynerchuk thing that I talked about in previous sessions, and I'll introduce here as well. But you know, that's as similar as don't think you're better than anybody else, and no, nobody's better than you. But it's more along the lines of learning from gatekeepers, learning from executives, learning from, you know, the people you network with, and always being genuinely curious about what they're doing, and just, again, being curious. I think the more genuinely curious you are, the more you learn from people. One of the regrets, I don't have too many regrets, but I do have some regrets that growing up, here's an example. You know, most of my friends, their parents, they were my friends' parents. So I had zero interest in them. And there's this one of my good friends, we used to tailgate every single Sunday for Patriots games. And his dad is the one who had the season tickets. And I always, but you know, and even at 30 years old, I would look at him as my buddy's dad, right? So whatever. And he would sit there and he would just read the paper the entire time. And then he passed away, unfortunately, a little while back. And his obituary punched me in the face as far as, God damn it, what an opportunity I missed here. Because he was a venture capitalist. He had started 4 companies. He had invested in a bunch of companies. He had started in companies. He had this super interesting career that I could have learned so much from if I had just sat down during one of those tailgates and had a beer with him and just started asking him those type of questions. And so, and it's the same thing with, you know, my grandmother, my great grandmother. She was 106 years old, and unfortunately, she lived out in Chicago, so it was too much of a distance for me to go too frequently. But I think of all the knowledge that woman has in her head about all the experiences, stuff I would never even imagine, you know, like airplanes, you know, like what was going through your head when that happened, you know? So those are the type of things where, you know, if I apply that to business, secretaries, the frontline customer success person probably knows more about your client than you do, by the way. So go talk to them, bring them out to lunch. Never ignore that one person in the room that doesn't seem important, because I guarantee you can learn something from it, good or bad, right? You can learn how to present, or how they present it and how it went across to the rest of the group, or what they said and how they said it. Those are all things that you just have to open up your lens to. Number 11 is just get 1% better every day. This one is a focus on continuous improvement. I read a book a long time ago called Raving Fans by Ken Blanchard. It's kind of my kind of book. It's short, big words. And his thing about raving fans is always create raving fan community, and know who you are, know what your customers expect of you, but then always try to do 1% better every single day. And that's my focus, is try to every single day get better at what I do. Make that one extra phone call. And it goes back to being open and honest with everybody, especially yourself, because if I can look myself in the mirror at the end of the day and say, did I do 1% better today than I was yesterday? I'm in the right direction. If not, I got to adjust that. And the last one before we run out of time here is one I added to the list and changed. And it was number 12. It currently sits at be good with worst case scenario. Be okay with worst case scenario. I used to say always have a plan B. All right. But I don't agree with having a plan B, because I think that gives you a cushion from your plan A. So it's like, all right, if I don't achieve plan A, then at least I got plan B here. I think we should be all in on plan A and not think about this plan B. But I also think we need to be very okay with worst case scenario. So worst case scenario, I send this email to, I'm dealing with somebody below the power line. I got to get to their boss to get this thing signed. I need, my strategy is whatever, but I have to engage here. Worst case scenario is I send that email to that boss and I lose the deal. Are you okay with that? If you're okay with it, then do it, as long as you do it for the right reasons. And it's the same thing. Just look at whatever decision that you have in front of you and say, what is the worst case scenario here? And if that happens, am I okay with it? All right. So just to wrap things up, again, take some time during the holidays to sit down and really think through what are your guiding principles so that you can then share them with your teammates, with your employees, and everybody knows where you're coming from. When I had a team of 6 reporting to me, I would share this with them. I say, guys, this is where I'm coming from. I'm not saying you have to have these guiding principles. I'm not saying you have to act this way, but I will let you know that when you get feedback from me or when I react to something that you did, it's based off of one of these things. And they had a crystal clear understanding when I would get upset or annoyed with something about, hey, John, okay, that's where John's coming from. And I encourage them to do the same thing. And I encourage you to do the same thing because it's a healthy exercise to go through to understand what your core values are. All right. So hopefully everybody got some value out of this one. Again, hit me up on Twitter, on Snapchat, on Instagram, on Facebook. We got a Facebook group going, which has a ton of awesome comments. Make it happen. Facebook group. So go find that. Feel free to hit me up at any time on any one of those channels. I'll answer any questions that you have. All right. Make it a great day, everybody. Thank you very much.